All right, welcome to the party, pals. So we are back with a special stream once again already. So today we actually have a special thing going on with Luke Canfield will be presenting about risk versus vulnerabilities. And yeah, it's really that simple. So one of the only things that I did want to cover is we may open up the stage here shortly after the presentation. If you guys wanted to stick around and conversate a little bit more, ask some other questions. So I just wanted to go over the guidelines and notice a little bit. So the meeting is recorded and live streamed. It's a business casual meeting. Don't share anything you don't want to be out there for the public to see. If you do happen to share something that you don't want to be public, just reach out to me on Discord, LinkedIn, or you can also contact me at that email address, contact@studygrc.org. If you do decide to come up on the stage later in this live stream, definitely feel comfortable. Come up on video if you would like, but you could just use microphone if you would like. Ask questions throughout the whole presentation. Go through and you could share your personal LinkedIn. Let me go ahead and drop this link here. So YouTube will not allow you to drop your personal LinkedIn, but you can join our server, and then inside of our live chat channel that's on our Discord server, you can drop your personal LinkedIn and social profiles and so forth that gets relayed throughout the platforms that we're streaming to. And like I said, just ask your questions, bring up other discussion topics. If you have questions, we'll mark them. Even if it's not directly related to what's being discussed at that time, worst case scenario, we'll loop back around to it. If we do happen to miss something, don't hesitate to bring it back up. You could drop something in the Discord or otherwise, but I definitely want everybody to get their answers and so forth as well, and feel comfortable asking is a really important part. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and transition over. So here's the presentation. Let me go ahead and bring Luke up here. Thank you so much, Luke, for giving us this opportunity. I'm very excited personally for this especially, and I'll go ahead and leave you to it.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Today I will be talking about risk versus vulnerability. These are two items that are often used interchangeably. Can anyone hear me? I think my mic.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Sound check. Okay.
Yep, perfect.
So anyway, I'm doing this presentation on risk versus vulnerability and a few other terms that are important to differentiate. So it's important to understand for doing a risk assessment. So defining risk in cybersecurity. A threat is anything that can exploit a vulnerability and jeopardize information or assets within your organization. A vulnerability is anything that can be exploited by a threat, and the impact is the amount of damage that can be done by one. It is worth noting that users are a vulnerability in themselves that can be exploited with phishing emails, social engineering, misconfigurations, or misuse of equipment. Why we have policies in place. So here I have the definition and breakdown of these. A lot of common threats are intentional, unintentional, or environmental. A lot of the ones we're going to be talking about here that are usually discussed in cybersecurity are intentional threats, which are hackers, malicious insiders, those kind of threats, though unintentional would be bugs in software, misconfigurations, or user error. And environmental would be issues related to the facility or the cloud system or anything like that, that like a data center being in the path of a hurricane or faulty plumbing on the floor above a server room. So there's two ways to quantify or go over and do like a threat analysis or vulnerability analysis. One of these is quantitative, which is numbers. Big thing with this breaks it down into monetary value for communicating that to key shareholders and management that aren't necessarily technical. This would be annual loss expectancy, single loss expectancy times annual rate of occurrence. Then there is qualitative, which would be breaking things down into easier to understand language, such as this is a high, medium, or a low. And this is what I would usually put in my reports just to get it out there quickly. So breaking vulnerabilities down, there are technical, procedural, and human vulnerabilities. As I mentioned before, a lot of these fall into the category of technical, procedural, or mostly human. There are risk assessment frameworks for going into these, which would be the NIST Management RMF, the ISO 31000, or FAIR. And each one of these has a different use case depending on the context that you're trying to convey or the system that you're working with. So risk is threat times vulnerability with impact depending on how you would categorize that. Context matters in doing risk assessments and doing vulnerability analysis. A system that is behind multiple layers of protection with critical risk on it isn't necessarily a critical risk. However, multiple internet-facing devices that have lower, mediums, and high vulnerabilities on them aren't necessarily low or a medium risk. They can be chained together and be much more destructive if they are exploited. One way to think about vulnerability examples would be your house is the organization you're protecting. That's the system. The faulty lock would be the vulnerability, and the burglar would be the threat actor. Practical ways to avoid this within your organization would be vulnerability scanning, maintaining patch management, maintaining employee training, and doing incident response planning. So there's a difference between high vulnerability and high risk. As I mentioned, risk isn't necessarily a vulnerability or a threat. The risk is the combination of the two. As I mentioned, a system behind multiple layers of security isn't necessarily a critical vulnerability or a critical risk, rather, because the likelihood of that system being exploited are low. Whereas lower risk or lower level vulnerabilities could pose a higher risk. Risk can't be completely eliminated. And in managing this, you also have to take into the context of what type of organization you're a part of. If you work for a government organization or healthcare, you're going to have different threats to that organization, which is going to impact the risk calculus. So the key takeaways is to understand threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts and how they go into determining how to mitigate and prepare for any kind of exploitations or incidents. And that is it.
Damn. Well, first of all, I kind of like how you condense all of that information into such a short period of time. Um, there's a lot of stuff that you covered in that. One of the questions that are up right now, let me go ahead and pull that on screen. So, are there qualitative analysis standards that tell us the best way to classify? What is very
Yes.
low?
That is usually put out and measured depending on what it is exactly. Um, it's usually based on the organization, from my
Okay.
experience.
So, would that just be like policies that they implement to classify?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Or
Yeah, and
they
then let me
take the
go.
ones that are put out from CISA or whatever threat intel is being used.
Okay, and I think it might be called an ISAC for the intelligence as well.
Yeah,
Would that?
yeah.
Yeah, so like if there's a association basically that they're partnered with as well. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, and then if anybody else has any other questions, go ahead and drop those in chat. And then I did also drop the stage link if anybody wants to come up. So we will go through and also chop this up so that way we put this into our presenters and talks playlist that we started. What kind of led you to go through and talk about the risk and vulnerability?
It came up during the last meetup I had with Jax and the rest of the people in Raleigh, Durham. Because next week
Okay,
I'm doing an audience led discussion on this topic.
perfect. And then that's in person only, right?
Yes, though I am going to try to figure out how to stream that.
Awesome. It would be pretty nice if you guys had the monthly meetup and it was there was some type of virtual attendance ability. I think that would be pretty neat. It seems like you guys got a few people together already. Let's see. Yeah, there's some people listening in, like Cyber Cycles listening in. You did get a lot of good feedback here too. If you guys do have questions, definitely drop them. But I mean, that was a pretty great recap there.
Yeah, it's one of those. I
Okay.
tried not to throw too much into it, to overcomplicate it for the sake of time and just my mental
Yeah.
bandwidth.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, and one of my big things with this is I find it interesting that you went back to the difference between risk and vulnerability. Um, I think that's a really good starting point. Do you feel that um, maybe it needs to be more clearly defined, like with the practitioners that are out there? Is that something that kind of led you to it?
Um, well, I did vulnerability management for the past 3 years, and a lot of the times it was the non-technical people that I was making reports for that would mix it up, and I would constantly during meetings have to go back and forth and be like, "No, this is a vulnerability. That's a risk."
Sounds to me like you should have made this for everybody else before.
And it's one of those things I didn't really think about until it was mentioned. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
why that never clicked.
Yeah, and while we also have you here, did you want to give a rundown a little bit about yourself? So you mentioned that you did like the vulnerability management.
Yeah, I got into cybersecurity back in 2021 or 22. I transferred over from support for a cybersecurity team, specifically program analysis and procurement.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here's another one. So Professor Black Ops is asking, do you do any business impact analysis? Any of the BIAs?
I did not. I was strictly on a vulnerability team. My reports went up and they were disseminated to the other teams. But no, I actually have not personally participated in any business impact analysis.
Yeah, and the main reason for this stream was just to go over the presentation and so forth. And if anybody did want to come up, I'll drop the link one more time. But I don't have a problem with ending it. I mean, this might. Let's see. How do I? Oh, there we go. I'm getting all confused on which command to use there. Um, but yeah, there's a bunch of feedback though. It's awesome. Did you want to make these slides public?
We could do that. I have no problem with
Okay,
that.
perfect. Do you have plans on doing more presentations?
Yes, I actually haven't done a presentation in nearly 15 years. So this is the first one I have done since 2011.
Well, and I am very thankful that we were able to get you up here on Study GRC, to be honest. Like I said, I was really disappointed when I heard that you were going to do it in person and I couldn't make it. So thank you for that honor there. And then AB Showtime does have this one. So how can an organization tell if reducing vulnerabilities is really lowering the risk? That's interesting.
It would be a quarterly reporting to see the number of breaches or events versus before and after implementing a new policy.
Man. And then there was this comment. I don't know if this is related. So a quantitative risk analysis background, financial services, model risk, model risk with high, medium, and low, supporting the GRC. I think that's more of like a comment related. Let's see. Yep. And then he's thanking you there too. Yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty sweet, and to be honest with you, like, I'm sure you could have made this like a hour-long presentation and so forth, but I really like how you kinda condensed it down with just, like, the bare minimum on, like, here's the information and this is the differences. So, I think that's a really good, valuable portion. And I think you're gonna be doing a longer one on site, right?
Yes, it'll probably be running a little bit longer since it's going to be more audience involved.
Oh, yeah. No, I
So
understand.
modifying that format to this, a little odd. This is also my first time using Restream, so
Oh, yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Well,
hoping
and
my
it's a
little
it's a
clicker
completely
would work.
right. I actually looked at one of those clickers before, and then, I found out by somebody else that the clickers don't work, and I was like, "Oh, well, that kinda ruins that." So, yeah, the only other option is they have, like, Bluetooth ones that might sort of work, but because it's in the browser, it does have an issue there. Alright, well, I'm gonna go ahead and drop, Luke's LinkedIn again. So if you wanna go ahead and connect with him, here's his LinkedIn. You're also, where are some of the other is there anywhere else that we can find you? I know you're, like, in Simply Cyber and so forth.
Simply
What are some other
Cyber, I have a
places?
YouTube channel. I'm pretty LinkedIn focused though.
Perfect. Yeah, and so I got that down there, and then let me grab this, YouTube channel too. And, did you have a schedule, on that? Did you wanna tell a little bit about the YouTube channel itself?
The YouTube channel, I usually drop videos on Saturdays, and that is mostly just touching on issues that are currently touching on issues that are kind of a degree of separation from like normal cyber. Like I just got through doing an entire series on decentralized warfare and some of the political theory that ties into some of the stuff that goes on with cyber.
Yeah, and I would definitely check those out. So, like one of the big ones that I recall is the kill chain and
Yes.
non-kinetic fires, and you kind of make them like flow together a little bit too, which is definitely a little bit of an art. But yeah,
Yeah,
definitely check
that's
that portion
something
out.
I've been into since like 2007 was decentralized warfare back when I got a poli sci degree.
Damn, yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, thank you all very much. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. You guys have a great rest of your night, and thank you guys for hopping in here.
I appreciate it. Hopefully, be back sometime.
Perfect.